Ah. Hey girl, hey, come on in, niece. Hey girl, hey boy, hey. Tonight we're discussing Book of Jewels. Let me go ahead and put that up in the corner. Put that in the corner. Hey girl, hey. Hey Carla James. You guys have your copy of Book of Jewels. We're discussing chapter 1. It's rolling across the scroll, the crawl rather, at the bottom. We're discussing chapter 1. It's called Life in Book of Jewels. You can, of course, download the book from Audible or your iBooks or Kindle or Nook or whatever device you have. You can purchase through CraigTheWriterStewart.com. Next week, next Friday, we're going to be discussing Book of Jewels, but we're going to be discussing chapter 2, which is the dating chapter. And I really want a lot of you to be involved in this dating chapter. Let me start off by saying that I appreciate all of you that have sent me home remedies and over-the-counter remedies for my sty. It is doing very, very well. I did the warm compress last night. I did it periodically for about, until the rag was cool. And I put some fresh aloe vera gel on it. So it has been shrinking by the day. But I also ordered something that one of you sent me. I can't remember who it was, but someone on YouTube sent me something today, an Amazon link. And you said that your son gets styes on his eye periodically. So, and you said it usually takes about 2 days for it to go away with this cream that you sent me. So I ordered it today. So thank you very much. Good day, thinkers, thought leaders, progressives, and dreamers. I am Craig the Writer Stewart, and this is the Facebook and YouTube live versions of So Much to Say. These are my thoughts in my voice on black shit, white shit, gay shit, and everything in between. I just dropped the link in there for you if you want to discuss chapter 1 of Book of Jewels. Now, please, if you have not read Book of Jewels, chapter 1 in Book of Jewels, or listen to it through Audible, please don't call in. I want to talk to the people who read chapter 1 or listened to chapter 1. I went through the chapter today, and I highlighted some things that I wanted to discuss. I wanted to start by, I put the link in there, so please go ahead and join if you've read or listened to chapter 1. I wanted to start by talking to you about why I wrote chapter 1. Chapter 1 is called Life. Chapter 1 is called Life. And I wanted to start by framing it. Hold on, let me see what this is. Okay. I wanted to discuss chapter 1 from Book of Jewels. It's called Life. And I wanted to start by framing it and giving you guys an idea of why I wrote it and what I wanted you guys to get from it. But I would love to hear from you guys in terms of what you got from it, what chapters or lines or paragraphs or phrases you highlighted. Again, if you've read chapter 1 or you've listened to it through Audible, I want you guys to call in. I've dropped the link down there for you to call in so that we can have a conversation, because I really want to hear from you. But I want to tell you, I'm not going to read the entire chapter, but what I will do is kind of start by framing it. And then I want to talk to you about specific lines, specific passages that I went through and highlighted today. So this chapter is called Life. And each chapter, remember, it opens with an original quote to frame the chapter. So this chapter is called Life, and I open it with, "You'll never have it all figured out. Believe, trust, and know." Right? So I was just having cocktails with some friends, right? And this live is actually going to be continued. I'm going to go over to Sydney and Will's house once we're finished this, but I'm going to do it in a separate live. But this life chapter, and I was sharing with them because Will said to me, he said, I want to hear some Lettucey. And I said, okay. So I put on this Lettucey song. And those of you that are on Facebook that have been following me for a while, you are familiar with a post that I made. Hey, Linda Hudson, I see you down there. Some of you are familiar with a post that I did on Facebook a while ago where I posted a YouTube link of Lettucey performing a song called Higher Than This. And she says the song is about God. And at one of my lowest points, at one of my darkest points where I was going through a functional depression, I went to a concert in 2009. And so those of you that read my second book, which is called One Thing for Certain, Two Things for Sure, A Memoir Continued, I'm going to go ahead and bring you guys in now because I can finish what I'm saying while you guys are here. But, oh, this is so cool. So my second book is called One Thing for Certain, Two Things for Sure, A Memoir Continued. But in that book, I opened that book with a relationship that I had, the last relationship that I had actually, in the book, the character's name is Jacob. And he and I went to a concert here in Atlanta. It was at Variety Playhouse down in Little Five Points, and Lettucey performed. So this was like circa 2010. And she was performing this song, and I remember her saying, I should have been a millionaire by now. She said, but I was near homeless. She said, because I had all of the wrong people around me. She said, and I had to remove those people. You guys can jump into, like, you don't have to be quiet. But she said, I had all of the wrong people around me. And she said, and God had to remove those people. And she said, I was sleeping on my friend's floor. She said the guy's name. It was some friend of hers that lives in New York. And she said, I was next to homelessness. She said, I was sleeping on his floor. And she said, God kept extending his hand to me saying, all you have to do is take my hand. Baby, all you have to do is take my hand, take my hand. She said, but I wanted to do things my way. She said, I was trying to choose. She said, I was trying to do the music. I was listening to everybody else. I was trying to do the music that people said I needed to record. I was trying to have the image and the look that everybody said I needed to have. And she said, I wasn't listening to God. And at that point in my life, I was in this relationship that was coming to an end. I was in this functional depression. I wasn't doing any of the stuff that I'm doing now. I had started saying in the card, but it wasn't really functioning at that point because the economy had crashed. And so the stores that the greeting cards were in had closed up. And so I had done my play and had sold out. But at this point, nothing was happening. Like I didn't know. So I was literally just existing. And at the time, the guy that I was dating, Jacob, book number 2, he was an entertainment journalist. And he was getting up every morning. He had a trainer. He would meet the trainer at 7 o'clock in the morning. He would go work out with the trainer. And then he would go to a meeting, or he would come back to, because at this point he had moved into my place. He had come back home. He was writing an article, or he was editing an article that another writer had written for the magazine. And so we were living this carefree kind of life because he had this illustrious career. So he was always like reviewing different restaurants. And so we would go and eat at fancy restaurants for free because they wanted a write-up in their magazine, right? But I was not feeling as if I was fulfilling my life's purpose, my life's work. And so this chapter, Life, is really about me trying to go back in time and figure out when I got to a point where I was afraid to take risks. Because when I first moved to Atlanta in 1998, I was 22 years old. And when you're young like that, you're spirited, you're ambitious, you're willing to take risks that you won't really take when you're later in life, when you're more sensible. But I had to figure out, I needed to trace back in time in this chapter life, when I got to the point where I was afraid to take risks. It's one thing to be afraid to take risks, and it's another thing to just be more sensible and more pragmatic. But I was afraid to take risks, right? Because there were points where I was struggling so badly and so desperately. Cars had been repossessed, bank accounts had been overdrawn. And so I was starting to question my gift, right? And so it was like, if you really are this amazing writer, then why hasn't any of your shit taken off? Why are you staying in Angela's house? Why is your car repossessed? Why is your bank account overdrawn? That's where the enemy kind of creeps in. You know, church folk, that's the devil was speaking. You know what I'm saying? So I started to really question myself. So I just want to read this quick little thing that I want you guys to jump in and tell me what you think. This is on page 1 of the life chapter. It's the second paragraph. And I say, I was adept at surviving on very little. I could stretch pennies, but I was mentally exhausted from having to be resourceful and finding new ways to rob Peter to pay Paul. So what were you guys thinking when you read this chapter?
I think I'm sorry, Craig, I just love you to death. I think the thing that really kind of stuck out with me about the life chapter is how we don't understand process. And so, like, as you kept talking about your process, even like having to be broke down by life and to really like see yourself and go back and do each of the the steps to find out where those things come from. We just keep moving forward, like thinking we can bust through, but you do get exhausted and you do get beat up by life. But what it kind of showed me was that you have this wherewithal to like start again and to keep moving. And I think that spoke to me the most out of that one.
Yeah. Linda, that's my auntie, everybody. Linda.
Hey, Linda.
No, we just got the same last name.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, right. I agree. I think the same thing. You know, we're always seem like we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, because it seems like we never have enough money to do what we need to do. But I think what we have to do, also understand that back in the days, I'm probably older than most of you guys, but anyway, what I'm saying, that we know how to make something out of nothing. We know how to stretch things as far as we can stretch it. And so we don't worry about the thing that the average person worry about. We just do what we can do, and we just keep it going from there.
And then to your point, I believe now, man, when I wrote this, or before I wrote this, when I was going through that, I didn't understand this. But what I understand now is you have everything that you need to do whatever it is that you want to do.
Yes.
You really do.
That goes in alignment. Yeah.
Yeah. You really have everything that you need to do whatever it is that you want to do. And
even in perceived lack, even in the perception of lack, because it is a perception. And, I think people have mentioned this before, but limitation is the prerequisite of creativity. And for somebody like you, that is an immense creator. I mean, things that just flow through you. And all of us are creators. We don't have to be writers or anything like that. We create life. Our very ancestors created the culture that dominates pop culture today. I mean, we're creators by nature, whether it's food, whatever. But that limitation, having little produces much, always. But we don't know that because we're comparing early on. Even comparing ourselves, sometimes always not to other people, but comparing ourselves to the vision that we see, not understanding like we're at the beginning part of it, right? So I would agree with that.
Andrew, did you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I want to jump in because like I just think reading this and then seeing you and then noticing that I'm the age sometimes that you are when you're writing this is just so like, it's just like, oh my, like I read this a couple of weeks ago when I first got it, and I put up my favorite line was prayer isn't magic, but I have a new one tonight. When I read on page 8, you said, I asked a question. I was like, what do you do when you're failing forward? Because you wrote in there, you was like, I was failing, but I was failing. And Look, I know this is in church, but that felt like a line from the Bible. I was like, what do you do when you're failing forward? You know, do you recognize that? Do you see that,
Mhm.
listen, this didn't work? Don't beat yourself up about it because in the end, it's going to work for a greater purpose. It's a greater
Yeah.
good. So now that's my favorite so far. That's one of my, it's on page 8. If you have the book, he talks about failing forward and, he was falling forward, but he didn't know it at the time.
At the
And so
time.
I'm like, what?
Yeah.
How do I now? It's almost like I got a secret. Like I got to now. I know that. So how do I realize that this situation is not as bad as I think it is?
It's
And
almost like it becomes an operating principle. Sorry, Craig,
no, go ahead.
Mm.
I get so excited. It's like certain things happen in your life, and to your point, that prayer is magic thing, it becomes an operating. I mean, prayer is not magic. It becomes an operating principle because it challenges us to say, "Hey, prayer is not magic." So that means I reap what I work for, not what I wish for. So
Hmm.
you just keep pushing. I love that too. That thing shook my soul too. I was like, "Ew."
Another thing that shook me was the lady in the booth. When I read the lady in the booth and she like stopped him and was like, sit down. And I'm like, this is how people see, you know, the gift and yeah, they see it for you. And I'm like, you just have to, you got to believe that. It's questions that I ask myself on a daily basis.
So
So it's,
Andrew was talking about the part in the book where I was working at a neighborhood restaurant. Linda, you remember that part?
Yes, yes.
Hmm.
And
Can,
and
can I?
I was a host at the restaurant, and I
Hmm.
was
Yes.
feeling really, really. That was at the stage where I was just about to shift into a different frame of thinking. But at that point, up to that point, I was feeling like every job that I took was in the way of my dream.
Mm-hmm.
But that job was one of the first jobs that I took that I realized, Craig, this is all a part of the fabric of your story. It's gonna
Oh.
be purposeful later. You don't see it now, but it's gonna be purposeful for you later. And
That's
so
right.
I remember being the host at this restaurant, and I remember walking through the restaurant, taking people to their table, and there was this little white woman, and she had the thickest Southern accent. And I remember when I was recording the audiobook, I was gonna try to affect her accent.
You know you got too much Baltimore in you to do that, honey.
And I actually did. And then I said, well, no, let me take that out of there. And I just read it normally. But I remember her, she was watching me. I noticed her noticing me. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember that next time when I passed through the restaurant, she said, she was beckoning, she was trying to get my attention. And she said, come here. And so I went over to her, I said, hey, how are you? And she says, what do you do? And I said, I'm the host. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, you know what I do? I sat you. And she said, no, what else do you do? She said, because you do something else. And the purpose of me writing that piece in there was even at that moment, at that section of my life where I realized, or where I knew what I was capable of, but I was starting to lose sight of it. Even when you lose sight of what your purpose is, people
Mm-hmm.
can still see the calling on your life. I don't care how far off track you think you are. People can still see the calling on your life. And
Yes.
that lady, and for me, she was one of the examples. She was one of the many examples that came along the way. Because I believe God speaks to us through people and through experiences. And so
Yes.
at those moments where I was feeling my lowest, he would send people like her to remind me, I'm still here.
The
And
workmanship.
you still have a
Hmm.
greater purpose. So don't get sucked up in this job because I have something else for you. Because like there were times, and I was saying this to Will and Sydney before I came over here. I was saying to Will and Sydney, even at my lowest points, because Will would literally during that time, that same restaurant where I was working, Will would call me every single morning. Every morning. I didn't even call him. He would call me or text me and say, hey, do you have a way to work? Because I didn't have a car at the time. I couldn't even afford a car at the time. My car had been repossessed, and he would say, do you have a way to work? And that's another example of the universe stepping in to provide for you.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to panic. And he would call me every single day and say, hey, do you have a way to work? And I would say, no, I don't. And he said, okay, I got you. I'm going to come pick you up what time you need to be there. And so he would literally come and pick me up. He would drop me off. And when I tell you, there were so many, what I call, well, not even what I call omens, clues, hints along the way.
Breadcrumbs.
Yes, breadcrumbs to remind you that you are on course and that I got you. You know?
Can I say something about page number 3?
Yes.
Okay, page number 3, the second paragraph, the last sentence. I read it as we're going. Okay. Oh, you ready? Okay, it says prayer allows us to connect with God, a source to make the life we've been given manageable. I interpret that to say, okay, it doesn't necessarily mean the good always. A lot of people think, okay, as long as I'm praying, everything should be good. And that's not the case, because prayer is kind of like an anchor during the storm. It reminds me of that song verse that says, Lord, you don't have to move my mountain, but give me the strength to climb.
Yes.
Yes.
So that's what I get out of that, Craig. I mean, Craig, you just awesome.
Thank you, Linda.
Look,
I had that same paragraph highlighted. I was going to read it. I had that highlighted.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah, that was one of the ones that I wanted to read. And like going back to what we were talking about a moment ago, sometimes we adopt, somebody else is trying to come in. Sometimes we adopt, for me, I realized, hey, Dwayne.
Hey, Craig.
I realized that I was adopting my mom's fears. Sometimes we inherit.
Oh, Craig. Get on it. No, stay right there. Right there. Don't walk down that one.
And I'm going to tell you exactly what I mean. There was a time when, if you guys read Words Never Spoken, the first book.
Yes.
There were moments where I had church agencies or government agencies paying the rent, just like they're doing this bailout now for the Corona thing, like they have these subsidies. And so they have those things year long for people who are in, precarious financial positions. And so I remember reaching out to some of those agencies saying, listen, I don't have enough to pay my rent. And I remember getting enough to pay the rent. So say, for instance, it's the first of the month and I pay my rent for April. As soon as I paid the rent, my mother would say, okay, now how are you going to pay May? I'm like, girl, I just paid April. Let me let me
get to the 15th. Jesus.
Because what I understand and what I realized once I moved to LA was anything can happen. Between now and May, anything can happen. You got me panicking about May, and I just paid April. And so I realized that a lot of my fear was stuff that I had inherited, stuff that I had adopted from her, because she was panicking.
Dare you say a mindset that you adopted?
Yes.
A mindset that has to be purged out of all of us, because we do. Like, I feel like being raised is one thing, and then everything that you've been given becomes a foundation for you to be able to launch and be able to take care of yourself to the next level, to the point where you have to figure out what of those things no longer serve you. There was a principle in them that you needed, but it's not always the application that you can use. And so, yes, you should be concerned about what's coming in the future, but you don't have to adopt the fear of what's coming in the future, because you ain't even missed the rent payment yet. Let me get to the 15th, ma'am.
Not the 15th.
That's true.
But then, so another thing is, how do we remember though? Because I started thinking, I'm like, he had these experiences in the past, but do you find yourself still? Because I remember, my biggest letdown was the year I was supposed to graduate from college with my bachelor's degree in 2014. And that year was the most depressing year, because I saw all of my friends graduating and I was not graduating, even though in my career, I was still moving up. I was moving up in my career. Every time they would say, oh, you're not going to get that position because you have to have a degree, I would get the position. But I was still dwelling on it. And I find myself, even now, when I come up to, now that I'm living the way I live and work where I work, even still, I still like, oh my God, I don't know if I could do that because of that. And it's like a God almost saying, like, can you remember, like, I brought you through all of that and you're still like having that. So do you find yourself doubting in this season still, or have you mastered that? Do you still say like, "Oh my God,
I
like
can't wait for this
it's getting thin, right? It's getting."
Renee said, "I can't wait for this answer."
Right.
To be perfectly honest with you, and I don't think that I have life figured out, because there's still things that there are still obstacles for me. But with respect to that, I think I still panic, but I'm really good about saying to myself, change the way that you're thinking. Why are you panicking?
Mindset.
It's about change. It's a muscle. It's a muscle. Faith is a muscle. And that was another line that I had highlighted in this chapter as well. It is a muscle. And you have to teach yourself how to move past that, to change the way that you think. Because when I lived in LA, regular gasoline for a car was $5 a gallon. I didn't have a job for the first 3 or 4 months that I was there. When I tell you, there were times that I would panic and I would be afraid to go and turn the car on, because I'm like, well, how about I put gas in the car? But every time I had that fear, I made myself think, something's going to happen, Craig. Stop worrying about that. Stop thinking about that. And I would change the way that I thought. It really takes practice. It doesn't happen overnight. And that doesn't mean that 2 minutes later that you're not going to come back and start panicking and thinking about it again. But whatever it is, like, you have to remind yourself something's going to happen. And then what you have to tell yourself too is, this is happening for my greatest good. This is all designed to grow me. This is happening to grow me.
Craig, I was thinking about, some of the stuff you were writing in this chapter about life, and how life, once you go through certain things, the obstacles that you go through in life, it gives you that mind frame and say, you know what? If you don't learn that lesson, you're doomed to repeat that lesson. And that's how, when I was reading your chapter, I was like, I understand what you're talking about, because I've been in that situation where I've been through so many obstacles, and I'm like, God, why am I still repeating the same lesson? You know what I'm saying? And I want to go forward. I like in the chapter when you're talking about living with your friend, and how you needed her and she needed you.
Yes.
And that was just so profound to me. I love that. I love that.
Touch that one, Dwayne. I have to touch that one.
Yes.
Go ahead, Laverne. Jump in there.
I think Craig, I love all y'all, but that is one of the hardest things for us to accept, that we don't have to return to people the something that they gave us in the same form. And what I mean by that is, as an entrepreneur, I started my entrepreneurship journey in 2015. And I remember like being the gift horse for everybody. Like, if people needed things, but when I needed them, I was not in a position to receive, because I was like, I can't give that to you because I don't have it to give back. But when you wrote that and put the value on what it means to be a friend to someone, to be a loved one to someone, to be company for someone, like, these are the things that we can always be in giving and receiving. Because I think sometimes, I grew up in a Judeo-Christian faith, we were always taught it's better to give than to receive, but never putting value on the things that are not tangible, that some people just don't have. Some people give us money in return because that's all they have to give. They would like to be able to give support and emotional, viability and all of those things. They would like to be able to give comfort. And they're like, here, take it. This is so easy. This is, so easy for me to give, the same way the love and support is so easy for us to give. I loved when you gave that example. It illuminated that part, because I would my friends would get mad at me, Craig, because I would know that I didn't have the light bill money at $200, right? But then I'd wait till $500 and they was about to cut that joker off tomorrow. And I'd have to call and be like, can you give me $600? And they were like, if your prideful butt would just call at $200, we can help you faster at $200 than at $500. You know what I mean? Right. So that was good.
Just to speak on that part right there for a moment. I remember, and I think it was
reciprocity. Yeah.
Yeah, I was watching. I think it was what's the woman who wrote? I think her name was Bren something. She wrote the book. I think it's called Simple Abundance. She was on Oprah.
Oh, I haven't read that one.
I think her name was Brene Brown. I can't remember, but
Brene Brown.
Brene Brown. That's it. Brene Brown. And she said, because it's really pride and ego when we can't come to a person and say,
Yes.
I need $100. And I don't mean just some random person. I mean somebody that's in your life that you love, that loves you, that supports you. You know what I'm saying? Friend, a family member. What she said was, when you have difficulties asking for help or asking for money, can I borrow $100 or whatever because I need to pay my light bill? It's because of how you would handle them if they came to you. You're afraid that they're going to treat you the way that you would think of them if they can't.
That's
What
true.
do you need $100 for? What she do with her money?
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Once you get past that, it makes it easier for you to be able to say to people, hey, I need help. I posted something today. I think I posted it on my Facebook, but I know I posted it on my Instagram. It was a little boy. He probably was like 3 or so, and he had 2 prosthetic legs. And I put in the caption, I said, it's a beautiful thing to be able to ask for help, because he had snapped on his prosthesis, but then he said he put his hands up and he said, can you help stand me up? Can you help? But it's a beautiful thing to be able to ask for help. But a lot of people aren't able to ask for help because it's attached to your ego and pride.
That's true.
Yes.
And I remember when I was going through a very difficult time financially, I remember my friend Angela saying to me, she said, if your ass end up homeless, she said, if you ever end up homeless, she said, because you wanted to be homeless. She said, because as long as I got this house over here, you have a place to live. She said, but if you end up homeless, it's because you wanted to be. And it made me realize that every single person that's homeless isn't homeless because they had nowhere to go. It's because they didn't have the courage to ask for help.
To ask for help.
Oh, wow.
No,
That's right.
not all. Because we know that there's some mental health stuff too. You know, some people that are homeless.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But
No, I think
you know
it's a concept.
You know what, Craig?
Go ahead.
I always had growing up, like I was always taught, and my mindset was like, what do they want? You know, if I ask you for something, what do you want from me? I mean, and so I would never. I mean, I remember I met a guy. He was really nice, and I knew he liked me, but you know, I was having a hard time, and I was living in Indianapolis at the time, and my car note was due, and I was working and everything. He was like, "Let me help you," and I was like, "No, I'm cool. I'm cool." And he looked at me and said, "I'm gonna tell you right now. You can let your ego get in the way of me helping you, or you could just, you know, be late on your payment. But still being me, I was like, I'll be good. I'm gonna figure it out."
Mhm.
But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. And to that point, it's like that's God. That's the universe showing up to try to help you. Because I was the same way. I never wanted somebody to be able to say, oh, I helped him with his cell phone bill. Or I helped him. You know what I mean? Again, it's that pride and it's that ego.
Right.
It's such a self-check. It's such a self-check. Such a self-check about how we receive things is how we treat people. The way they say it, you know, us little church girls from the South, they used to say, judge not that you may not be judged, for with the same judgment, you'll be met with that judgment. So the minute you release anything that's attached to it, it's like, oh, she just needs $50, or oh, you need a ride, or oh, I don't know why. Yeah.
Can we go to page 13?
Yes.
Oh, okay. On the
I
second.
love that you have your pages marked.
Can you turn your Bibles to page 13, please?
The book of Craig and the chapter of life, honey.
You know, hey, I'm old. The second paragraph.
I have something highlighted on page 13.
I got that highlighted too, Craig.
If we got the same thing highlighted, I'm
okay, that last sentence, it says, there were teachable moments. Besides, it's always easier for those who haven't lived your life to judge your life. Can I tell you something about, you know, how I live my life? Okay, I live in Florida, in Missouri. Okay, and it's a guy that I see all the time. I just want to say it's a white guy. I don't know why. I'm just gonna tell you. And I see him all the time. He's dirty. You can tell either maybe he's maybe a drug addict or whatever the case may be. So whenever I see him, if I got a little extra change, sometimes I've had to even turn my car around to get his attention so I can kind of get to him. I mean, he's always dirty, and most people would say, I don't want to be bothered with him or whatever. But whenever it's something about my spirit that tells me, you never know. You never know what got him to this point, and you never know. And you know, just because I'm doing okay today, thanks to Trump, no thanks to Trump. I take that back. No thanks to Trump. But what I'm saying was, I don't know. I ain't in this guy's situation someday, or either somebody in my family. So I don't judge people because I don't know what their life experiences have been. So if I got a little something, I'm gonna give it because they say too much has given, much is expected.
Mhm.
And that's what I do.
Mhm.
And that's the way I
Yeah.
feel like that I will be blessed.
And it's true. I mean, because tables turn. Tables
Yes.
absolutely turn. When you said that,
Yes.
it just reminded me. I remember I used to be a part of a network group. It was only like 5 of us in the group. It was a couple, a gay couple. They had a property management business where, like, if you owned a property and you were renting it out, they
Mm-hmm.
managed it for you. So they collected the rent. If there were any maintenance issues, so you didn't have to.
Mhm.
They were the go between person for you. And then it was me, a writer, and had my greeting card business. And then there was a friend of mine who he was in interior design. He had an interior design business, and there was another person. So we used to get together like the last Thursday of every month and just kind of exchange business ideas and just kind of connect. Because when you're an entrepreneur, oftentimes you are the only person in your friendship circle or family circle. So we were kind of coming together to support each other. And I will never forget, there was a woman in that networking group who was really, really doing well. She had several properties. It was a Black woman. She had several properties and she was living the life. Do you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
And so she lived out in Athens, which is an hour outside of Atlanta. So we would meet at a different restaurant in the city of Atlanta. So one time we decided to go to Athens to meet at her house, so she didn't have to come to the city. And we got together at her house. We all watched The Secret, the movie, the book The Secret, and they had a DVD, a movie.
Mm-hmm.
We got together at her house and we watched that. And I'll never forget, it was close to the holiday. It was like around Christmas time. And we all just got together at her house. And everybody knew my struggle and what I had going on and stuff. And I'll never forget, when we left her house, she gave each of us like a little Christmas card. But mine was like really thick. It was like something in it, right? And she said to me, "Don't open it until you get home." She said, "Open it when you leave," is what she said. And I remember opening that envelope when I got in the car, and there were 10 $100 bills. She put $1,000.
Wow.
Oh my!
Because
Wow!
she knew that I was struggling. Let me tell you how tables turn. You ready to hear this?
Yeah.
Come on, Saint.
Many years later, when I put out my first book, it was probably like 2000. Well, the first book came out 2012, but this probably happened around maybe 2013, 2014, or something like that. Tables had started turning for me. Things had started to turn around. And this lady had lost all of her properties.
Oh, wow.
She
Wow.
lost them through a divorce. She had got caught up with this man. And I think this is another reason why I'm always really pushing women to stand in your stuff. Keep your stuff separate. Like, you don't have to share your stuff for love. You don't have to invest your finances to receive love. And so she ended up putting this man on her different properties, and he lost it. She had like 7 different properties. She had like $100,000 liquid cash.
Mm.
And he went through that. And I remember taking her to lunch.
Mm.
Because those tables can turn. And so, to your
Yes,
point,
yeah.
Brenda, you have to be careful how you treat people.
Yes, most definitely.
Absolutely.
Because those tables turn, and they turn quickly.
And you know what? A lot of people would say, I wouldn't give that bum anything because all he's going to do, he or she's going to do is go out and buy drugs, whatever. But you know what? I give it in my vein the way I'm going to give it. Now, however they choose to use it, that's on them. And you never know. Okay, so if they did use what I gave them to go get a hit, you never know. That may be that last hit before they go to rehab.
Mm-hmm. But it was your intention behind it. That's what counts.
Exactly.
That's what's important.
Exactly. So I'm not going to judge anybody.
I wanted to
Yeah, that's good.
call your guys' attention to it's page 2. I had highlighted this too, because even at the height
What
of
page?
page number 2, it's in
Page
the
2.
first paragraph. At the height of my depression, like, even though I went through really, really tough times and difficult times, there was always a glimmer of hope, a glimmer of light. I always knew that I would come out on the other side of it. I didn't know how long it would take. And I didn't know if I really would have the courage to go through all of it, because, like, being an entrepreneur, and this isn't just about being an entrepreneur. This is also about whether you're a parent and you have dreams of going back to school. It's whatever, however you apply it to your life. But I just didn't know if I had the the emotional stamina to continue
Oh,
to
that's
go
good.
through this process, until it was going to happen. But this first paragraph where I say I knew what I was capable of and what was possible, but I wondered if I'd ever get there. I also knew what God was capable of doing, but wondered if he would ever do it for me. Because he doesn't have to do it. And that's where grace
That's
and
right.
mercy is, and gratitude.
That's true. That's true.
Gratitude.
Because he doesn't have to do it for you.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about my life, and I remember when I wrote my first book, I remember people saying, like, well, who do you think you are? Like, how is your story any different than anybody else's that's gay? Any other Black gay man? Like, what makes you think your books are going to sell? People aren't buying books now. People don't even read anymore. I heard all of that. But there was something about, it was just like a burning desire in my belly. It was just like a burning. It just wouldn't go away. And people said all of those things to me. And I say to myself when I think about it, because there are mornings that sometimes I wake up and I just have tears in my eyes because I'm just really, really grateful. And I remember thinking and feeling like, and praying and just being thankful and saying, you didn't have to choose me. You could have chosen any Black gay boy to tell these stories.
Yes.
I have so many Black gay men that email me, DM me, whatever, that say, oh my God, this is my story. You've written my story. So he could have chosen anybody. He could have chosen anybody to open up a bakery. He could have chosen anybody to open up that shoe store. You know what I'm saying? So,
And that's go ahead, Loving.
And another thing.
Linda,
okay,
sorry.
go ahead. Okay, and another. I'm sorry. And another thing. Success isn't always materialistic.
correct.
Success. Wait a minute now. Success can be how many people, how many lives you've touched, how many lives you've changed. Because Craig, every day when I hear your and read your motivational sayings and stuff like that, you don't know how many people you're going to touch and how you're going to touch them. So we shouldn't always measure our success about how big our house is, how many cars we've got, because they can be gone tomorrow or today. We got to make sure that we can give something to people beyond that, but they can pass that on to someone else too.
Yes. Linda, and Linda said that can be gone today or tomorrow, and you could be gone today or tomorrow. So that's why I love that you said that, Craig, because you know what it is? Every person who sets out to do anything, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're cutting out on parenthood for the first time, there are people connected to your burning purpose and your blessing. There are people. That is why it gnaws at you, because there are people connected to you. And so if there was not the case, we would have one brand of toilet tissue. We would have one brand of combat boots. We would have one fast food restaurant to go to. But and what I love about how you approach this, you have definitely made the story of a Black gay boy everyone's story. We're no different. The encouragement that we need when we're down, it doesn't matter what you do with your genitals. You need that. You need it. Like, tell me a time. Like, tell me a time when you haven't needed encouragement, when you felt rejected or left out or not thought about. Like, that's not just a Black gay man's story. That's everyone's story.
Right.
And as humanity, we should be able to see ourselves in each person's story, because we're made up of one thing. Each of us walk a different path, and the people who have the courage to tell those stories and to bring those things to light and really take a gel and pull humanity together and say, hey, let me pull you in and let me show you this. There were people who needed to be delivered from their wrong thinking, connected to Craig. There were people who needed to hear their story out loud, connected to Craig. There are people who needed to have empowerment in their own walk, connected to Craig. And I say Craig because any of us can insert our name, whether you're a writer or whatever and so the fact that you keep living so boldly, like, it's what some people would call dangerous. It's like, oh my gosh, like, it's dangerous to be this revolutionary in the sense that I'm just gonna give light to my voice. So we really truly love you for that.
Yeah, I think it comes from a real place too, because one of the things I kept saying, and a lot of people see you and you're like, of course we're not making your head big tonight. This is, you can feel the passion. No, I'm just saying you can feel the passion behind it because, like Laverne was saying, one of the things I thought about is when you wrote about, and I'm getting chills, but when you wrote about the lady, I think it was your mom's friend, when she said what she said, the first thing I thought is, what if this would have caused him to stop?
Yeah.
What if this
Right.
would have? What if him hearing that
Yeah,
would
I
have caused
remember
him? And I
that.
thought about because we all have stories how we found Craig, and it's been a little bit over a year now. But I was like depressed. I was suicidal. I was seeing a therapist. I was on medication, and finding this live. It's been a little over a year. I have not taken one medication. There's a period of darkness in my life that I thought I was going to go back, but I did not. And it's just like. And so when I read that, I got chills, and I got chills now because I was like, oh my God, because it just encourages me that when I hit those pockets, when you hear people talking about you, when you hear people saying you'll never be anything, when things don't turn out, you still have to keep going because there are Andrews in 2025 or 2030 that are going to need to hear Andrew went through this and he came through it. And and so that was just like, so because you keep talking about purpose and all through this chapter you talk about purpose and things like that. So it's pretty cool to see.
It's a beautiful red thread.
Well, you know what, Craig? Okay, Craig and everybody else. I'm sorry. I was following what's her name, T.S. Madison first, and I heard you in the background, and I said, who's that guy that I hear all the time? And so for some reason, one day she mentioned your name, and I said, okay, I'm going to start following. That's how I ended up following you, Craig. And I said to myself, whoever that is, he's a profound young man. And you really are. And I'm telling you, Craig, you have been a blessing. You just don't know. I mean, like I say,
yes, most definitely.
You may not be a billionaire, but guess what? You have blessed us in so many ways that you beyond your belief. I'm telling you.
Thank
you
you
really
so
have.
much. Thank you so much. But to the point that Andrew was making a moment ago, I really don't think that I could ever levitate or get the big head, so to speak. Because
I hope not. We gonna let you. We won't
y'all
let you.
not gonna let me, right? But when I was really, really struggling, like I was staying at my friend Angela's house, I was driving her second car. Like I said, money was always funny, and I used to pray because I pray every single night. I say it. I don't just say it every night. Brush your teeth, floss your teeth, brush your tongue. Say
continue to bless me indeed.
Yes, bless me indeed. I say my prayers every night. Sometimes I get down on my knees and I say it really quickly and jump back into bed. But I say it.
You say it right.
I used to pray. I literally used to pray, God, don't bless me with it, whatever it is, until I'm going to take, until you appreciate it.
You're ready.
If I'm going to levitate, if I'm going to get a big head, don't give it to me. Allow me to sit in this space until I'm going to appreciate it. And so all the years that I was going to the Department of Family Children and Services to get food stamps, look, all those repossessions, he was keeping me down in the fire. He was keeping me in the fire.
Well,
and I talk to you guys a lot about Tyler's work, but I will tell you this. One of the things that I learned from him, and this is when we sat down and we spoke. I write about this in the first book, Words Never Spoken. And he said to me, this is after I met with him at his house, and then I was facing my first possible eviction. There was an eviction notice on my door. And I called him after our first meeting and I said, listen, if you're going to help me get this show on stage, on tour, I need you to help me now because I have an eviction notice on my door. And one of the things that he said to me was, he said, God is processing you. He said, God is processing. He said, he is going to use you in ways that you can't even imagine right now. He said, I can see it. Just like I said to you a moment ago about that woman at the restaurant. People can see the calling in your life. He saw it too. He said, God is going to use you. You can't even imagine. And during that time, I was going through this tunnel. I could see the light on the end of the tunnel, but I had to go through that tunnel.
That's right.
That tunnel was that depression period. That tunnel was that process that he was talking about, that Tyler was talking about. And that's where you are fortified. That's where the universe sends everything your way, because if you really want it, whatever it is, you're going to muster up the courage and the strength to keep going and to walk through it, to get to the other side. Go ahead.
And
Well,
it
it's like
purposes you.
on page 17, when you wrote, life is beyond abundant. If you choose to see it that way, life is bountiful despite what you think we lack. There's blessings every single day. It's up to you to see and notice them. And I was just thinking
That's
some of the stuff you're
right.
saying.
That's
and then
right.
you go and say God is gracious. He's merciful and faithful, and when you believe in him. So I mean, pretty much like what you're saying about Tyler and everything, and how, you know, and like Linda was saying that not everything is monetary. You know what I'm saying?
That's right. That's right.
And God is faithful to do. If you believe and trust in what you're going through, and you focus the trials that you're going through, God is faithful, and He's going to see you through it.
Yes. And to
And
Andrew earlier,
and say-
something about comparing like to other people. That's usually what happens. We get caught up in where we think we should be in our life.
That's right.
I don't know
That's
if you watched Insecure, the HBO show with Issa Rae. There was a scene where her best friend Molly was seeing a therapist, and the therapist said, "Well, that's called magical thinking. Magical thinking is when you believe that your life should have been any different than it was."
Right.
Magical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I have one question before we, because I know we're coming close, but so you know I have good questions, and since we're talking about faith and we brought up T.S. Madison, Madison, and I think most of your followers we went through Madison first, and then we heard Craig, and so that's how we found you. But I was watching Maddie in the morning, and I was watching Maddie in the morning, and there was a point in the segment where those that follow you know your faith. We know what you believe in, but those that don't, it was like you were about to talk about it, but you kind of went to more of the universe instead of. So, do you find it, because she's elevating, which is causing you to now elevate? More people are knowing who you are. Do you find it more difficult? Let me see, make sure I word it right, because do you find it more difficult to confess your faith publicly the higher you go, for fears not to offend a certain audience or a certain community? Because hold on, because you don't want to be compared to the common church, right? So is that your fear, that you don't want to? It's like, I'm going to include universe and God so that they make sure I'm more spiritual than religious.
No, I think I interchanged God, because I did it in the book too. I interchanged God and universe, because I understand that although 80% of Black folks believe in a higher power, there's a 20% that doesn't. I actually have a friend in Houston, Texas, who said to me a couple of years ago, he said, "Craig, I can't really relate when people say, well, pray to God or go to God." Or he said, I don't believe in God. He said, and most times Black people assume that because you're Black, you believe in God. And so I just want to make sure I'm grabbing their attention too. I believe in God, but I just want to make sure that I'm not losing them by only using the word God, and then they check out mentally. So I want to make sure that I'm speaking about energy, because I really do believe that God is the source of energy. You know what I mean? So that's not my fear so much in terms of alienating people, or, that's not my fear. My fears have been, especially, as we embark on this TV thing, and, we kind of talked about it a little yesterday on Maddie in the Morning. My fear has been becoming more visible. And you guys probably wouldn't believe this, but I really am a shy person.
We don't believe. Not after that picture you put out today. When you were
Linda. But I've learned to get comfortable. You know what I'm saying? And for example, like when I was in college, I was a journalism major. So we had a lot of speech classes, because like what I wanted to do, I wanted to be on the news. I wanted to sit at the news desk and tell the news. But when I got into my sophomore year, I realized that I didn't have a passion for news to move to some small town to work my way up to a major market. So I was like, I don't love news like that. And I knew I didn't want to do a kind of work. I didn't want them to tell me, okay, with Craig, today we need you to go report on this fire. Tomorrow we need you to report on this murder. The next day you're going to report on politics. I wanted to do more of a creative writing. So that's when I kind of figured out what I wanted to do, right? But I was very, very shy, and we had speech classes. And because they're trying to prepare you, and they wanted to knock out any type of diction. Like if you were from New York, they didn't want to know you were from New York from the way that you spoke. They didn't want to hear that you were from the South. They didn't want to hear any of that. So they knocked all of that out of us. But we had to get in front of the class and speak. And I used to panic days before my turn to speak was even coming up. And so I think I've learned to get accustomed to being on here. But one of my fears about doing the TV show with Madison was because the higher you climb and the more visible you become to people, the more possibility there is to disappoint people. Because so if there are 100 people that love you, there's going to be that 20 people that feel like, oh, I don't really like him so much. Because they expect all of your ideas, all of your thoughts to be identical to theirs. And so what I try to do now on the lives, I say all the time, we don't always have to agree. Like you guys don't have to agree with me. I just want us to have a healthy discourse where we can have a conversation. You can disagree with me. I'm okay with that. Because I'm learning too. But sometimes when you get to that realm of television or whatever, it gets to the point where there's always that small crop of people that are waiting to just tear you down. Somewhere in this book, I say there are people who always that look up to you because they're ready to tear you down or something like that. They want something to do and to tear down. And because I know that there are people who are just waiting to just, I don't know, find fault.
I know, but something, it's like you were saying earlier, and I'm not saying but, I think I'm saying and. I think blessings that come without character crush you.
Mm-hmm.
And because you have, great brands are built slow. And I'm not saying who you are is a brand. You get what I'm saying? But over time, Oprah said one time, they were like, oh, how did you become such a marketing genius? How did you build such a great brand? And Oprah said, it wasn't branding when I came along. She said, I made a series of decisions with my life, and the identification with those decisions became my brand. Yeah. And I think you embrace that. You get what I'm saying? Like you make a certain set of decisions, you know what your moral fabric is internally, and you understanding already that there is there, just like there's a remnant to carry your brand forward, there are a set of enemies that are custom designed for you. And they're custom designed for you because God says, be still until your enemies become your footstool. And which person ever went and got a footstool to just put their feet up? You go get a footstool because there's something you can't reach. Right. So that's why we can pray so greatly for our enemies, because they're there for us. It's another form of love. It's an alternative form. And we all like the good feeling love. Like, oh, this feels so good. But the enemy love is the love that causes us to elevate. And I think that's why this is incubating so big for you and Madison, because just like there's a custom set of love, followers that like, we're going to follow you. We're going to rock with you, whether we agree with you or not. There's a custom set that is going to try your patience or try to tear down your character. But just like Nehemiah said one time, I am on this wall doing an important work and I cannot come down. And your work is so important to the people. You can't come down off of that. So you're going to be fine.
Well, that leads me to say also that nothing happens to you or for you until he, higher power, whoever you want to call him, is ready for you to handle it. Because sometimes we think, okay, I want it now, and then we get frustrated when we don't get it, so we give up or we start, cursing and blah blah this or whatever. But like Craig on page 8, everybody on page 18, the last two sentences, where it says, some would say your life is already decided, that it's fate. I say fate meets destiny at the intersection of choice. And I do believe that. And then it goes on to say Life is about choices. So live with intention, live
Yeah.
with purpose, even after life happens. And that last sentence leads me to believe that even after life happens, me, okay, so some of those things that you thought should happen or would happen, even though they didn't happen, still have a purpose and still have that faith and keep it going. Cause it's
Yeah.
coming.
Love it.
Oh my God, I'm so impressed by all of you.
Who don't have the book? I feel like gifted books. Who don't have the book? Jesus.
I do too, Andrew. I feel like gifted
Yeah.
one too.
Who needs the book? You gotta read it.
Everybody
Better.
need one. We ain't got
Oh
nothing else
my
to do. We
God.
might as well read.
And here's the thing. I want to, because Andrew and Linda, you mentioned Madison. One of the things that I will say is one of the other prayers that I used to pray was, and this is when I moved to LA, I used to pray, God, connect me to people who know you and love you. Because if they know you and love you, they'll love me.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
my prayer. And I used to pray also, and an addendum to that was, connect me with people who know my vision, who have similar visions, similar work ethic. And I believe that cosmically, I ended up meeting Madison, and the very first time that I ever went to LA, I went there to write with Brandy. And
Yeah.
I remember after I was about to leave to come back, and her mom and I had gotten into this, argument on the phone. And she said, well, what was your experience like being out here working with branding? And I said, well, it was no different from working with the artist that I was working with in Atlanta. The difference is she has a record deal, right? And I said to her, here's the thing. Entertainment is one of those industries where someone has to invite you in. It's not just based on talent. It's about someone giving you permission to come in. And what I've realized about Madison is she shared her platform with me. And, she and I talk about this all of the time. And I really want us to have this conversation publicly one day. It may end up happening on the TV show. But, when she and I started working together, it really, really was just, it was serendipitous. It was not something that was plotted. It wasn't something that was calculated. Like, I literally had reached out to her to come and do a podcast on So Much to Say podcast. And it was about to be my second season. And I reached out to her and she ended up coming here and we did the podcast. Well, about a month after that, she reached out to me and said, hey, listen, I want to do a podcast. I want to set up a podcast for me and Kaya. And she asked me, how much would it cost to set up this podcast? How much are you going to charge me? I said, well, no, I'm not going to charge you. I said, because I really do believe that as Black people, going back to the dedication, I said, I think that we need to be sweeter and kinder to each other. We need to sometimes do stuff for each other without always attaching a price to it. I said, so I'll do it for you. And so I ended up going out there, setting up the podcast, and that whole thing. And then slowly but surely, I started working with her because I had to go out there to record it. They needed someone to record it and edit it. And so then the fallout happened between her and Kaya. And then just organically, I just started helping her with the show. I started helping her put together topics and helping her set up the lighting and all this other stuff. So it just happened organically. And I think, even if it was on a subconscious level, I think because she saw how I was just helping her just from a genuine space, she just slowly but surely started trusting me with more responsibility, with more stuff. Because we laugh and joke about this now, but when I first met her, she wouldn't even leave her cell phone out in front of me because she was so afraid that somebody was going to get on her phone and post something to her social media or hack her social media.
Right,
and we laugh about it now. And then even like with her debit card, like I would get over there and we'd be there for the entire day getting ready for the show for that night. And we would go and get lunch. And, because wherever she goes, somebody is going to recognize her. So she would say, well, here, Craig, can you run in and get our food and, and just get, go in there and place the order, just come back. She would hand me this little PayPal card that doesn't have a debit card number on it. Because she thought that I was going to take her debit. It was crazy. But we've built this level of trust now where she trusts me to a point now where it's like certain things she won't even decide on until she speaks to me. She'll say, let me talk to Craig first. But we have that kind of relationship. I've learned so much from her. She's the reason that I even started doing lives. She's taught me so much I can't even begin to sit here and tell you. So, but what I will say is she was generous enough because, like you said, most of you found me through her, through working with her. So she shared her platform with me, and so for that, I'm forever grateful.
Yes, and we're grateful we found you.
Well, listen, I am grateful for you guys coming on tonight. You had some really good input. Thank you so very much for supporting the book. Thank you for so much for taking time to be on here. I appreciate you guys so much, and for telling people about the books and for posting things on your social media. So I don't take it for granted because when I first got started, I literally used to think about Elin Harris all the time because there was no social media when he started, and
Yeah.
there was no. It was literally word of mouth. And so when you
And
guys
I
post,
read his book.
yeah, say it again, Dwayne.
Dwayne.
I read almost all of his books. So when I found you through Maddie, and you have books, I was like, oh yeah, this is on profit. I'm so happy about this.
Yeah. And so like people like he became who he became because of word of mouth. Like women in beauty salons, the gay community talking about his book. But when you guys post on your social media, that's word of mouth times 10,000 because people can be anywhere in the world, watching your social media. So I appreciate you guys for doing it.
Craig, as you can tell, I'm upping up my social game.
Yes, you are. Yes, you
So,
are. So
so
I appreciate you guys.
we had 5 people that needed a book, and then so
Yep.
I'll do 4 of those, and I think there was one lady, D. Rowland, says she's gonna gift the book too. And
Okay.
so it was Cherried on YouTube, Deidre F, CC Robinson, Audrey, and Christina on Facebook. So if y'all can, do you want them to email you or?
Yeah, email me those names that Andrew just listed. Can you guys email me through my website with your address? It's craigthewriterstewart.com. It's rolling on the bottom. Just email me your address, and then Andrew's going to gift you those books. And then you said D. Rowland, are you still in here?
So,
D. Rowland, oh, before, yeah, let me not speak for her. Just make sure. And if not, I'll pick it up.
I did see her in there.
Craig, this is Linda. If I want to gift a book, can I gift it through Zelle, send you the money through Zelle, and then
Yeah, you can.
how do I do that?
Yeah, you can send it through Zelle. And then
Okay, is it 20 or 25?
25 for, well, it depends on which one they want. If they want Book of
I-
Jewels, whichever one.
Okay.
I think we gifted Book of Jewels.
Okay.
They need the book of jewels.
They need
That's the one.
They need the book of jewels, honey. They'll find all
That's
those other
right.
ones
Right.
because all of
That's
them
the
are
one I
good.
want to do. That's the one
Okay.
I want to do.
So Jessica just said I would love a book. So Linda, the 25 that you sent through Zelle, I'm going to send to Jessica. So Jessica,
Okay.
email me through my website, craigthewriterstewart.com. I just need you to send me your shipping address, and then Linda's going to cover it for you. D. Rowland is still in there. D. Rowland, if you could just send the 25 through either Zelle or Cash App. My Cash App, I'm going to put that down at the bottom so you guys can see it. And then I'll go ahead and gift that one as well. So that's, what is that, 7 books? Because Andrew was at 6. Andrew said 4. Linda's doing 1, and then D is doing 1. So that's 6.
Yeah,
So
6
the first 6 people, other than the
Okay.
ones that Andrew named,
Okay.
I'll go ahead and
Okay.
gift you guys the book.
All right.
Wait. Yeah.
But yeah, all right. Well, thank you guys so much. And next week, next Friday, we're gonna do chapter 2, which is dating.
Dating.
Yeah,
I got
it's
so much
good
to say
too.
about that dating chapter.
I'm going to skip
Yeah.
that one. I'm going to skip
ready
that
for
one.
I'm ready.
That one.
Well,
I can't
well,
do
I'm
that.
ready.
Baby.
I won't have too much to say about that one, except for my past dating, because I've been married 37 years. So I have to
Y'all
go
can
back
still
away.
date.
Okay, I have to go.
I
You're
started
right.
today.
You're right.
I started it
Exactly.
today.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
started that one today.
You said which 4 did you name, Andrew?
So we got Cherried. If you can include if you're on YouTube, include your YouTube name too. But we got Cherried on YouTube, Deidre F on YouTube, CC Robinson, Audrey Kelvin from Facebook, Audrey Claven, Christina Jefferson from Facebook, and then Jessica from Facebook.
Oh, okay.
Jessica Butler Wright.
And D. Roland, thank you again. I appreciate that. I appreciate you gifting a book. And you too, Linda and Andrew. I appreciate you guys.
No problem.
All right, you guys have an amazing night. Please stay safe. Stay safe, guys.
Brush your teeth.
Brush your teeth, floss your teeth. Look, I did my oil pulling last night, y'all. That oil pulling is serious.
And brush your tongue.
And brush your tongue.
Right.
All right, have a great weekend, guys.
God bless.
You too.
Okay.
I'm getting on in a minute with Will and Sydney, so I'll be back on in a few minutes. I got to go over to their house.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Good night. Bye-bye.